got three prompts for us. Do you guys want to know what they are beforehand, or do you want to just
I
find it
think we should,
as
in
we
the
go?
spirit of the show, I think we should just wing it as always.
As
You know, this
always.
this is
All
not
right.
a Jon Wolheim toast show. This is not a Justin Talent Skill Tree show. This is RPG, man. This is like let it rip.
Let her rip.
Sick.
Go.
Ready to rock and roll? Well, hello, nerds. Welcome back to another episode of RPG, Really Passionate Geeks. We are here with Kiwi, with Justin Williams, and with your man, Jon Wolheim here. Kiwi, how are you living today, Button Smasher?
So far, so good. You know, it would be a lot better if I was live from GDC like our boy John down there.
Oh, this old thing? Oh, that?
I'm
is the
surprised they
virtual
keep you on
background.
that side of the curtain. I figured they'd want to hide you away.
Yeah, don't tell anybody they let me out.
Yeah, and
J-Dubs, how you living, man?
I'm good. I'm good. W triples here. I'm super jealous that John is at GDC. John, the Ryan Seacrest of gaming, has a perfect opportunity to network, meet other nerds out there. But I'm just taking my time here, just chilling, relaxing, just catching up. So I'm happy to be on the show, though.
It's a nice upgrade from the Steve Buscemi of gaming, which is my usual go-to. But yeah, here at GDC, this is Game Developers Conference. For anybody who hasn't seen any of this stuff, it's all over the socials right now. There's actually, believe it or not, 3 conferences happening at the same time, which is just insanity. There's GDC, Game Developers Conference here in San Francisco. There's GTC, which is the NVIDIA conference, which of course is all things AI. And then there's PAX East going on in Boston as well. So there's so much happening right now. It's like impossible to be everywhere at the same time, but hopefully everybody here has seen some content from at least one of those places.
Yeah, you're not flying over to PAX after this, are you?
No, but I am going to GTC tomorrow, and I can't
cool.
wait.
Very, very cool. Well, so John is our lead today. What do you got for us?
All right, so this is another episode about nostalgia. We're dwelling in the 90s here, and this is something that I a ton here at GDC, and so it's a light theme that we'll be touching on, and it's all about the boss fights, like the really big boss fights, the ones that we remember the most. And we talked about this briefly, but I wanted to really unpack this a little bit more because it is an analogy that I'm telling you right now, I don't think that there's a single panel I've been to that hasn't had some mention of this is like the big boss fight of this thing. It's just used so much. So what is the biggest boss fight that you remember, or the ones that you cannot forget to this day?
I love it. I love it. First of all, I'm all for it. Biggest iconic boss fights. Like, I mean, that's the beauty of gaming, right? You're on this set path to try to beat the game, and you're always striving for the goal to reach the boss at the very end of the game. And it's usually iconic, or sometimes it's a big failure.
That's true. That's true. And there's a couple mini bosses even that come to mind, right? We all know what mini bosses are. They're the little road bumps that give us some big skill boosts along the way. But I'm going to throw my hat in, and right off the bat, when you said boss fight, ironically, I went to Snake Eater Boss, which is the name of the boss. And Snake Eater Metal Gear Solid was just one of those epic, I mean, like, just beautiful, like, story. When you're playing a game, it's like watching a movie. And I just remember the lead up to fighting the boss, who was the one that trained Solid Snake throughout the whole game. It's in like this beautiful setting, like an old Japanese, samurai movie with cherry blossoms falling, and it's just so epic, and the music, and right away it came to my mind, and for some reason that stuck with me, and it hits me to this day in my feels.
The act of betrayal, right?
Yeah.
It's like Akuma, or it's pretty iconic in animes, right? You're training with like a sparring partner, like Ryu and Ken, right? Ryu and Ken, the Street Fighter, or it's just that rivalry, and then somehow the path veers out, and you guys are mortal enemies. I think that is truly iconic when you feel that act of betrayal.
Justin, I'm not going to say mine because I think that you and I might have the same one. So I'm not going to say mine, but what's yours, Justin?
It's gonna okay. Which Final Fantasy is it?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I mean, I guess I'll save that for later.
choices.
I guess I'll save that for later, but I would say for me, just like a nostalgic memory for me, as far as a boss fight. And this doesn't have to be the end game, right? This can be any boss, right? As far as in the game, right? As long as this is a boss fight.
Sure.
And what constitutes as a boss fight? Usually a higher hit points, a more challenging.
It's the one anytime you have to save the game before you go into that next room.
If you can save the game, right?
Yeah.
If you get the opportunity to save the game, because there's a lot of games out there where, especially like Battletoads, where it's just like, sorry, you lost your life, you got to start over again.
Or you playing Elden Ring and just every second of the game is a boss.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I'll throw out my nostalgia boss fight. And I remember playing this game during Christmas time, and I love playing holiday games because at the time my mom would always, be cooking, whether it's cookies or whether it's a nice holiday dinner, and you just get that smell. And so I associate with a lot of my nostalgia games with the smell, the memory, and as far as the timing, and the timing was during the holiday season.
What's that? Oh, you need to move this? Okay.
Ask him who his
Okay, give me
favorite
2
boss
seconds.
fight is first.
Yeah, right. See if he wants to join the podcast. Tell you what, guys, I'm gonna be right back with my answer. More after this.
Okay.
It's all right. We can always chop it here and
Yeah.
keep going. It's no biggie.
I knew something was up when I saw him, and I was just like, I wonder what he's going to say.
He had to save his game before his boss level.
Speaking of boss fight, right? He had to save
I saw the
boss comes out. Can't make this up.
unscripted, baby. Yeah, I knew he was up to no good back there when he was staring over his shoulder, pushing that cart. So he'll find.
I thought he was gonna get mad. Like, are you recording me? Because some people get mad too. Like, don't be recording me.
Don't walk behind me.
You kind of public, and you kind of went into the shot.
This is public domain, baby.
Right? No expectation of privacy.
Oh, John's over there listening this whole time. Very surreptitious.
That's why I said, was there like a walkable distance? Because maybe like a Starbucks or something. I'm not sure.
Okay, so spotting somewhere new now.
There's a ton of stalls in one of those back rooms. It has an M on the front door. You go in there. I hear the acoustics. The acoustics are very good in there too.
Yeah, it has like a really nice sort of like Halo-esque effect.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
You just gotta,
there. Make sure you have the noise dampening so you don't hear all the next to you.
That's what I love about
cancellation is super important.
This is what I love about John too. He just don't give a fuck. He's just out there just recording. For me,
this is somebody's booth.
For me, even though I may seem like an extrovert, I would get the willies. I would be like, oh man, antsy as hell. It's like, is people looking at me? But I can go ahead and reset. Timing for me, the holidays, and my nostalgia was the iconic game of Super Mario 64. And when battling Bowser, like at the time when I was growing up, there wasn't many, social media outlets out there. So I wasn't being spoiled with, what Bowser looked like, but I did hear chatter, right, through like Facebook and at the time, like GameFAQs. And so GameFAQs was a really like a text bulletin board. So really didn't show pictures, but then when I'll be reading GameFAQs, Super Mario 64, like how did I get this last star here? I would see comments like, oh, Bowser's crazy. Oh, who's gone to Bowser yet? And so that would hype me up. And then I remember finally reaching Bowser, and I was just literally blown away with larger than life Bowser, because we're used to Bowser, being either 2D side scroller and just jumping up and down, just blowing fire. And then now you got this big Mike Tyson looking Bowser and 3D.
Yeah.
It was 3D. And then the whole point of how to beat Bowser was to grab its tail and then 360 your controller. Yep, 360 your controller, and then spin him out of the arena. And for me, that was just like that really lived up to the hype of Bowser. And I was like, yes, this is how Bowser should be represented. He should be menacing. He should be larger than life. And there should be a cool way of beating him. And at the time was doing a 360.
Oh yeah,
Man,
classic.
I remember that. That mechanic was so interesting, and what a cool way for them to use that. You know, on a panel here, that somebody was talking about how revolutionary that controller design was to use the analog stick with the sort of like pinpoint navigation in that 3D world. Of course, we're all kids that have absolutely no reason to appreciate that or scope, but man, that was amazing.
So
Boy, mine.
Yeah, okay.
So, I'm just going to say Sephiroth because Justin didn't say Sephiroth. And somebody here has to say Sephiroth. Otherwise, the statue is like, we devalue the statue. We dishonor his memory. So I'll just say Sephiroth just out of the pure, like, grandness of it. But that's actually not my favorite boss fight of all time. My favorite boss fight was the first time that we got to... So, WoW, right? Vanilla WoW. Back when, like, 40-man raids were how you got stuff done. And Encourage AQ40.
Leroy Jenkins.
These were the days of Leroy. That's correct. Leroy was like very relevant at this time. I would say, of all those different bosses, downing them, right after Nax Ranis opened up and we actually downed the 4 horsemen, my guild probably worked on that for a month and a half, and way more time than we should have spent on it. And it was just that, it was all the incredible work that went into, to your point, Kiwi, the saved game, except we just finally did it together. And I literally jumped up and threw my chair. It was probably the nerdiest moment in the universe. And I should probably not talk about it on a recorded podcast, but that's what happened.
Hey, there's something to be said about that one specifically though, because you experience that with other people. It's not right. I mean, whoever's in the room with you, it's online. It's a group, right? Your whole raid party can experience this together and talk about it forever, like you are now.
So true. Yeah, I think that's changed too. Like the meta of what games have, the meaning of a boss has evolved a lot over the course of the last couple of decades. Now it's stuff we fight together.
I like it. I just got to touch on one question. The Nintendo 64, were you the middle and the outside or both outside? I mean, I know it depends on the game a little bit, but you could do both.
It just depends on the game, right? Like you kind of had to have it. I'm trying to remember GoldenEye.
Well, I've always liked the hard directional. I've always liked the hard directional instead of the joystick.
Like the D-pad.
Because the joystick to me wasn't very perfect example. Street Fighter games or fighting games. For me, I could do my Fireball Hadouken on the directional, but with the joystick, sometimes it didn't register. Sometimes it got wonky. For me, the directional, and maybe because I grew up with the original Street Fighter 2 game, I was playing on directional.
I mean, even Mortal Kombat, any fighting game, I feel like is a D-pad game. It's easier to hit those combos and those long up, down, right, left, crescent, jump, kick, whatever. I feel like the D-pad is meant for that. But
which is ironic because it comes from the arcade, which is inherently a joystick. So you'd think it would translate better to the analog stick, but it does not, right? Because there's that the arcade is actually a D-pad, but with a stick that points at those, as opposed to this sort of fluid, no dead zone analog stick, right? Because you don't want to be halfway in between the two things when you're trying to throw a fireball.
Yeah, and that's why you see in the tournaments like Smash, the Smash tournaments or the Street Fighter tournaments at home where they're playing on console, they always bring out the arcade,
their deck,
joystick, because absolutely, John, you hit it right on the head. For it just registers better. It registers like a D-pad better, and you can actually hit those directionals. And you can feel that groove when you hit it. I think that's where the key is when you hit that groove. Where on a joystick on a controller, you don't feel that indent of going down in a southwest or a northeast type of direction.
Yeah. Did you guys ever have that experience where you think you're pretty good at a game? Or let me rephrase that. You think you're great at a game, right? And you're ready to just smoke your friends. You've been practicing, maybe Kiwi, you got your like fatality down with Sub-Zero, and you're like, okay, here we go. I'm gonna school these guys. You go to your friend's house and they pull out that controller Justin's talking about, and you're like, oh no, oh no.
That's when you
That's
know
when the
that you're
Morgan Freeman pops up, Morgan Freeman voice. And that's when he knows he fucked up.
yeah.
That's when he knows he was in some trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. There at Mortal Kombat, there was a Mortal Kombat, and it was a more recent one. I think when they first started doing remakes, like on the Xbox, I can't remember which one, but there was one I just was grinding on, right? And I was perfecting my scorpion moves, and I was just killing it. And my brother comes along and hasn't touched it a day in his life, and just, I don't know if he's button smashing or what, but he just destroys me, and it pissed me off so much, man.
Button smasher.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that emotional damage why you named this Button Smasher?
Yeah. Yeah, there's some PTSD back there for sure.
I remember
Coping with it.
playing Street Fighter, and remember the quarter.
You put it when you're next.
Right. So when you're playing a fighting game back in the day in the arcades, people would line up to play the winner, and the way to signify that you're up next to play against the winner is you will put the quarter on the arcade. And it's funny when people do that. When I remember that, you would have like these brand new kids that get dropped off by the parents, and then they see the fighting game, and then they do the walk, right? Because there's people watching. There's people watching that don't want to play the arcade, but then because then you have like your tryhards, right? And then you have this new kid that was dropped off by the parents, and then he or she they are like, all right, let me go ahead and do the walk. And when you do the walk, right, because you got all these people watching you, and they're all looking, who is this new person? And then they put the quarter up. They're like, oh, new challenger.
A new challenger has entered the arena.
And then that's when the Terminator
right.
walks
I
in, right?
thought I was, we were all conceited at the time, and we were all like, yeah, we're the best of the best, especially a Street Fighter game. Like a Ryu and a Ken was all day long in an occasional Guile. But then, so I would win like 3 games as Ryu. 3 games, right? I'm like, yeah, no one can beat me. And of course, this new kid comes up, the spoiled little brat comes up, and he picks Zangief. And I'm like, oh, man. And if you play Street Fighter, that's the best counter to Ryu and Ken. Because one, like, throw move, like 3 throw moves, you're done for.
Totally.
And no matter and Ryu and Ken's are aggressive, so they usually start the match, doing their kicks or their fireballs, their uppercuts. But every move that you do first, Zangief is there to counter you. So it's like it's a turtle match, as they say.
Yeah. I know I would always go in with Blanca and just
Then it's time for a little spinning pile driver
moves,
Yeah, who was Zangief's counter?
Honda, probably, because he had that like torpedo move.
Yeah,
yeah. No, it was Chun-Li, because if you could get inside and use lightning kicks, this is before she had her fireball. If you get inside and use lightning kicks, you could pretty much crush Zangief because he had to be on top of you. Man, that reminds me, J-Dubs, back in like the mid to late 90s, when there were magic card tournaments at shopping malls. There's a lot of words there that people today might not know about. One of those is shopping mall. This was a huge set of stores that included like a food court where people would gather and play magic cards. And there was an arcade, and it would almost always we'd play a magic card tournament. People would win cards, lose cards, and then we would bet cards on X-Men versus Street Fighter or whatever, Mortal Kombat was current. And yeah, it was definitely that quarter. Like you'd put up your quarter or you'd put up your card that you're betting, and then people would come up. And yeah, there were some hurt feelings after some of those matches. There was some those are some angry nerds. I was one of them.
So in your food courts, you actually had Magic the Gathering tournaments?
Oh, yeah. Hosted by the local card shops.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I went to the local card shops for my Magic the Gathering tournaments.
I was heavy when Yu-Gi-Oh! First came out. I would ride my bike. I'd smash on some Yu-Gi-Oh! Down at the card shops. That was my jam. Magic was
Can we
more
just have a moment of like, oh, yeah. Can we just like have a moment of like respect and admiration for the people who run comic shops?
Yeah.
And like do so for like basically no money out of just pure passion, just for us, right? For us, it's like a community service, really.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course. It was more of a venue than it was a shop of any kind.
Community gathering spot.
Yeah.
That actually, speaking of going to shops and things, that's actually my second question, which is this. What is your favorite gaming peripheral that you've ever owned? An example would be the Power Glove on the original Nintendo, which was also featured in the movie The Wizard, which is crazy, very much archaic if anybody ever watches it. But yeah, how about J-Dubs? Let me throw it to you first. What's your favorite gaming peripheral you've ever owned?
I can tell you the suckiest gaming peripheral that I owned.
So the most memorable one
that
because it sucked.
that I regret ever buying, or I didn't buy it. I think my parents bought it at the time. Was the Virtual Boy. Do you remember the Virtual Boy?
Oh, I remember that thing. It was
Yes.
so bad, but amazing.
It was so bad.
my
It was
God.
amazing. Exactly. It is exactly what you just said. And at the time, everyone was hyped about the Virtual Boy because virtual reality was like such a thing, and it was like the next new thing. And Nintendo always try to reach that new boundary, like what can be fun, and what can we do to make it fun, like the Wii, with the nunchucks. And so when the Virtual Boy came out, it was this bright Ferrari red headset. And most of the gaming stores actually had it on display. So you would go into a gaming store, and that's how you would actually know about the Virtual Boy at the time, because again, you didn't have the social media. So you would see this futuristic looking Ferrari red headset in the gaming shops, and you would go, oh, I gotta try this. And I think that was the downfall where they actually let us try it, because you try it and it's like you're playing Mario Tennis. I remember playing Mario Tennis. I think that was the demo back in the day. So Mario Tennis is a fun game regardless. So whether it's a virtual reality, 2D, 3D, whatever it is, Mario Tennis is fun. So you got to play Mario Tennis and you're like, yes, I love it. And then your parents buy you it and you bring it home. And then after 30 minutes or so, you get a blinding headache. And it is unreal. I mean, the colors were just like puke. It was puke red, puke yellow. And then the games that they had was so limited, but they were terrible. They were just absolutely terrible. It was just like one and done. You're just done.
It was a precursor. I mean, we learned from that terrible mistake.
Yeah. What was yours, Keith?
Oh, okay. I got one that you guys probably didn't even think of because it's just so naturally ingrained in our, just rose-colored glass 90s eyes. The duck
Big
hunt
winder from
gun.
Kiwi here. Yeah, there it is.
The duck hunt
Zapper.
gun. The zapper. The zapper. When we first got that, I just remember, Duck Hunt was probably the most basic, generic, simple game to play ever. And with that gun, I would play it just for hours because why not? Can I shoot the dog? Can I shoot more ducks at once? Like, I don't know. But that, I think, might have even been one of the first games that specifically came with a peripheral that you had to have, right? So, I mean, it was glorious. It was glorious. And to this day, people still try to get those old bubble vacuum TVs just so they can hook that up and play it.
Yeah. I think that was the second version, the second rollout of Nintendo. I think the first version was the robot. Do you remember the robot?
Oh no. What am I missing?
Yeah, those robots are worth some money now, man. You can find
Amir
one.
Satvat has the robot. Well, the robot was there
Shocker.
to like change your games, and it would like I saw the robot did was just basically change the game for you.
Oh, like a jukebox. It would just
It was
have
like a
cartridges that
It was absolutely it was
it's
terrible.
It's the little butter robot from Rick and Morty. Like, oh my god, this is
all-
what I do.
Oh my god.
And nobody wanted it, and it wasn't a hit. And so then they were like, all right, we got to do something better. We got to come up with our mascot. And that's when they came out with the Mario Duck Hunt. But with Duck Hunt, did anyone else like put their gun up to the screen and cheat?
Of course.
Oh yeah.
Of course. You had to try it at
Yeah,
least.
we actually brought up. Does anybody else have like questions about that friend you had that like tried to shoot the dog a little too much? Right?
Yeah.
Where you're like, I don't know, it's something. Those people are like, I wonder which maximum security prison they're currently residing. So Kiwi, you definitely stole mine because the power zapper, I think it was called, or the zapper, that gun was just, oh man, it was so good. But I would have to say, I can't get off the Virtual Boy though. We should start a business where we take old Virtual Boys and we put Apple Vision Pro technology inside of it, and then we sell like the Apple Vision Boy. Just, Etsy would be ruined if we did this. You know, I'm gonna go with the one that I, for some reason, could never make work, and I loved it because I could just never figure it out. And it was the running pad you play track and field on. Remember this one on the original NES? You'd have to run on the silly little buttons, and you could do all kinds of stuff on here. But the track and field one was just, it vexed me. So I was so young, I just couldn't figure it out. That one was funny. That was something else. Never had a power glove. I had a good friend that had the power glove.
See, that's what it is. Your friends. Like I never had one, and there was always a friend. You know,
You never had a friend, or you never had the running pad?
No, I mean I had plenty of running pads. I mean,
in my basement.
It was
in the bunker I grew up in.
Yeah, you know, I saw sunlight. I think when I was 13 or something like that. That's when they let me out. Yeah, there was always one of the well-off kids on the street who had the first DVD player, the first peripherals, the first computer. Yeah, there was that kid, and I was friends with her.
Well, did you ever watch the movie with Neil Patrick Harris?
Starship Troopers?
From the TV show.
Starship Troopers? Oh no.
TV show that we all love. How I Met Your Mother. But 8-Bit Christmas.
What? No.
8-Bit Christmas. And it's sad, right? Because we've gone away from live cable. And so a lot of the movies out there, we don't really get to know. But it was a straight to release HBO movie, I believe. HBO or Netflix. But go ahead and watch it. I'm surprised you guys haven't watched it.
No, my HBO was the fuzzy things in the middle of the night.
So, John, if you remember the scene.
You sure that was HBO, Kiwi? You sure that was HBO? But...
So the whole movie about 8-Bit Christmas is nostalgia of, it's sort of like Turbo Man with Arnold Schwarzenegger, where the whole movie is talking about his challenges in trying to get a Nintendo Entertainment System as a Christmas gift from his parents, and it's all sold out from all the stores.
That's great.
And he had to find creative ways to either convince his parents him to buy one and find one, or for him to get ways of getting money so he can acquire one. Yeah. But there was just one scene in there, John, I don't know if you remember, but he was talking about the neighborhood kid where he had all those peripherals. He had all the latest running pads. He had all the latest games, and he hated this kid. He did not like this kid, but he still went over there. And this kid was like a jerk about it too. He was like, if you're going to come into my house, I need you to do like 50 push-ups. I mean, he didn't say that, but he was just very arrogant about that.
Oh, this is a modern movie. This is just like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh,
fresh.
Okay.
It took me a minute too, because I was like, are we talking about like the early 2000s when I met How I Met Your Mother kind of era? But no, yeah, this is very recent, and it's really good, really well produced. HBO. This was produced during COVID.
I like
that's why it went right to direct to release, as it were.
It makes more sense now what we're talking about. I was thinking late 90s, early 2000s. I'm like, man, really? HBO direct release, huh? Like,
yeah, I mean, HBO's been killing it with direct releases. I mean, that's how I watched the new Combat.
Yeah, Godzilla versus Kong. The Snyder Cut, right, of Justice League, I think, went right to HBO, right?
Might have.
Suicide Squad.
Speaking of forgotten eras, though, that's actually my third question for you guys, and that's this: what is the weirdest gaming system you've ever owned or played? Let's just say played, in case we're all the kid who didn't have all the stuff. What's the weirdest game system that you played and enjoyed, or at least remember, and why?
Gaming system?
Yeah, there's some weird ones. There's some that kind of fell by the wayside, right?
Yeah, there was one for me, and it might not be that weird or anything, but it was a flop, and it wasn't what it was supposed to be, and that was, I can't remember the name of it, the Sega
Master System
handheld that
Dreamcast.
was like, was that Dreamcast?
Oh no, Game Gear.
Yeah, Game Gear.
Oh yeah. I was playing my Game Boy, and my buddy's got this big fucking expensive Game Gear, and he's playing Sonic on it. And I'm like, this thing is awful. Like, what the hell is this? I'd rather play my Game Boy or just to play the Sega or Dreamcast that's sitting right here. Like, I did not like it. And the battery died in like an hour. It was just, I was not a fan. And maybe I'm the weird one. Maybe the system wasn't weird. Maybe it was
It
me.
did eat a lot of battery power.
Yeah, it really did. It was all double A's too. Like I filled several landfills with those batteries. I'm why climate change is happening.
Yeah. I mean, the Game Boy
now.
totally killed it with that error. It was simple. It lasted forever. It was like your Razor flip phones. You know, that thing was like a tank.
Yeah.
And I love the Razor flip phone because it lasted forever. You didn't need to like recharge it like the phones we do nowadays. And of course, it got popular from, you know, TV shows like The Sopranos. And that's where I first saw the Razor flip phone, by the way, was on Sopranos. And I was like, gotta get it. It's like doing that whole flip. Hey, what you need? What you need?
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Remember when the Matrix had that like switchblade phone, which never actually, I don't think it ever actually really existed.
Yeah,
Everybody wanted
I've actually researched it. When that came out, so the phone, it was so cool. So the way it worked is when you pop it open, it shoots down, it slides down. So the phone slides down, and it was like a very cool way of like being able to talk. And then when you're done, you just pop it back up like a gun. It was like a clip on a gun. It goes down, and then you pop it back up.
Oh yeah. That nothing says I'm a
That was-
badass like a phone like that, right?
Yeah, when you have to reload your phone before every time you fire.
Either that or you pretend like you're on a really important business meeting when you're like, 16 and you're like,
So important.
For me, I did get this as a Christmas gift, and this was right before Sega Genesis. And so I don't know if it was at the time where Sega Genesis came out or it was about to come out, but I think I hinted to my parents like I wanted Sega. And so they gave me the Sega Master System,
Oh no.
which was like the worst Sega system out there compared to the Dreamcast and like the Sega CD. It was like the worst one, right? It was the very original. It was like the Nintendo NES system of Sega. And the game that came with it was Altered Beast.
Oh
And
God, I love Altered Beast. Power up.
yeah,
Oh,
you're this.
so good.
First of all, you're like this jacked up naked dude wearing a loincloth, right?
So yoked. He was so yoked.
Yeah, he was so
Inappropriately
jacked up.
unreasonably shredded.
Way too much. Like He-Man level. Too much.
He was He-Man Chad level for sure. And you're basically just going around punching and kicking monsters, right? And the whole point of the game is you got to get powered up. You got to find that beast within you in order to transform into this wolf. But when you were this wolf, it was like Super Saiyan Goku style. I mean, you literally destroyed bosses and minions when you got empowered. But it was super terribly hard too as well. Like I don't think I ever got past the third level whatsoever. It was so hard. And I don't think I've ever bought another game from the Sega Master System because that's when like the Genesis came out, right after that. So it was a waste of money for my parents. Sorry, parents.
Yeah. And a weird controller too. A half moon or something I remember my friend again had it, and I just remember it like, what the hell is this? I guess we were just coming off of the square blocky ones though.
The curved design, the precursor to the Genesis.
Right.
Man, I loved Altered Beast. First of all, that game was so ridiculous and arbitrary. Like there was no explaining anything. You like why are you this jacked Greek dude? Like, and why do you become random like mythical beasts? Like you were a dragon once and then a moth, and then now you're like a crazy wolf. It was there was that era of like it is what it is. It's like just play, just go for it. You'll figure it out. You'll die a lot. You'll figure it out. So there's two systems come to mind for me, but one is like far and away the most ridiculous one. Actually, three. So the Dreamcast with the little VMU, the visual memory unit. Remember those?
Oh yeah,
you had like maybe 64 megabytes or something of like storage, and plug it in. And you played Soul Calibur, like the character you're playing was on the screen. It's very good. That was actually pretty good, but systems that like blew me away was the Panasonic 3DO. Panasonic made a game system at one point. It was called a 3DO. I got one because my neighbor bought it, thinking it was a VCR, and he didn't know what it was, and so he gave it to me, and it was like $700 in the '90s. So it was crazy, but it had Alien versus Predator on it, and I all of a sudden became that kid. Like everybody wanted to come over to my house for the first time, and I was like, yeah, I milked that as much as I could. But the Atari Jaguar, was the king of like, what in the hell was happening here?
I totally forgot about the Jaguar.
Like, the Jaguar's controller was as big as my face as an adult human man, and it had like 2 buttons on one side, a D-pad, and then I think it was like 6x6 of tiny little individual buttons that you had to have a separate little plastic sheet that you put on by game. Like the level of design flaws here is, I feel like it was an episode of Punk'd, except as a product. And it was just, oh, it was so bad. It's the only game system I've ever returned.
Atari just got the whole office together and they said, everybody draw something out of a hat and we're just going to throw it in and make a new console. Here we go.
Well, those consoles.
Only bad ideas, yeah. Design games is the only right.
You know how you're trying to grow your hair long, and either when it's short it looks good, or when it's long it looks good, but right in the middle it sucks, because that is like the most awkward stage of growing your hair long. That's what I felt like we had at the time in the 90s, because we had TurboGrafx
92 to 98.
Yeah. TurboGrafx 16 came out. Neo Geo 3D, Neo Geo 3DO came out. What in the world was that?
Neo Geo.
The Atari Jaguar, like you said, and then the Sega Master System. I was like, what in the world were these systems? The Dreamcast did hold up.
Yeah,
it did hold up to graphically wise, and at the time, the Dreamcast was set to blow away Nintendo until Sony came out with the same graphical power, half the price.
Yep.
When Sony came out with half the price of the same processing power of the Dreamcast, it was over.
Done. It was over. And the games were even cheaper. You know, that was an interesting chapter, because not only did you have, so the PlayStation, I believe, was originally a collaboration between Sony and Nintendo, right?
Sony,
yeah, I believe they were originally a collab with Nintendo.
Sony, Nintendo.
And like, oops, Nintendo's like, we probably should have just made that happen. But
well, I loved
Saturn.
it when Nintendo. So Sony announced it during like E3. If you guys can remember E3, these were like these big events back in the day, physical E3, events that you had to learn where gaming news came out. And Sony announced, they were so excited. They were like, yes, we partnered up with Nintendo. We did a handshake, and as we all know, you don't trust handshakes until you get it in writing.
Mm-mm.
And so Sony did their announcement. And what the funny part was, Nintendo came up right after Sony, after they did their announcement, and said, nope, we're releasing our own system. And like, Sony was so pissed. So Sony then went to Sega. And Sony was like, hey, Nintendo screwed us. They dropped us like a ton of bricks, and can we partner? And Sony did the same thing. I felt bad for Sony. And then Sony did the same thing. And Sega did the same thing. Sega said, sure, we would love to partner with you. And then what did Sega do? Sega partnered with Philips to create the Dreamcast. And so Sony got dropped twice in the competition of handshaking deals. That's why you kids at home never trust a handshake until you get it in handwriting. And then Sony, the best revenge is served with, and Sony did the unthinkable and said, okay, you guys want to play? All right, you
schmucks. Yeah,
we actually been creating electronics since before the Atari came out. We've owned the electronic market. You want to play that way?
Hold my beer. Here we go.
Can make these products 1/4 of your price, and that's exactly what they did. They said, we actually have warehouses right now. Like, we have an army of warehouses. We're gonna make
components,
chip,
right?
We're going to make every chip 1/4 of your price. And that's exactly what they did. So God bless Sony for doing that.
Good
And
job.
the flagship games. It's funny we mentioned flagship games because you couldn't really launch a system unless you had like that game, right? And so Nintendo 64 was obviously Mario 64, and then shortly behind that, GoldenEye, right? But some of these systems just never had that game, and that actually be why they died, right? Like some of the ecosystems weren't even that good for some of these systems that actually worked.
Yeah.
But
I mean, you
yeah,
had
you got to have
Sega Master
sort of
System
stake
with
in the
Ultra
ground.
Beast.
Yeah, I think
There you go. Yeah, your signature.
one success story is GameCube. I loved my GameCube. I mean, the little handle on the back, get the fuck out of here. That's great. But I can't think besides like maybe, the new Metroid
All the
Prime.
carrying around that you do.
I can't think really what one of their flagship games was. They just kind of killed it.
Smash Melee, bro. Smash Melee.
Oh, Melee was great, right? But I feel like Metroid was one of the ones they tried to launch like what Super Monkey Ball and like Beautiful Joe and some of these just off the wall titles, which I love Beautiful Joe, by the way. Weirdest game ever. But my GameCube was just my companion. I remember I would take it to my buddy's house. Most comfortable controller, too. Most comfortable controller. If I had to put hands down, that thing just it welded in and you just F-Zero or whatever all day long.
Well, I don't think it was the titles that killed GameCube because it was a Nintendo franchise. What I think killed GameCube was again, Nintendo was trying to innovate all the
losing
time.
those tiny little discs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so Nintendo's
Never
biggest
counts.
failure, in my opinion, was they were trying to keep up with the processing power of PlayStation and Sega. Where they should have stuck with that innovation, in which they did with the Wii when they found that gimmick, right? Nintendo is known for their gimmicks. Nintendo was actually marketing. I remember a documentary where Nintendo wanted to get away from Atari because the downfall of video games was that, Atari was supposed to take the market by control and was supposed to be the video game king. But what Atari failed to do was, first of all, they tried to gatekeep their IP on owning cartridges. In order to play a cartridge from Atari, Atari had to make the game. And developers were like pissed because they wanted to develop a game, and they wanted to use the cartridge, right? The cartridge was like, okay, we'll use your cartridge, but we're going to make our own games, and that's how we're going to make money. Where Atari was like, no, this is our system, this is our cartridge. You're not going to make any games for us unless it comes for us. So then they got sued, of course, and then of course they lost. So Activision, Atari lost, and then what happened at the time was this flood of like you released Pandora's box, and so every single company out there at the time was like, video games is huge, and so we're just going to make a video game. And it didn't matter if their developer skills were good. It didn't matter if the game was going to be 10 hours long or 5 minutes long. That's why E.T. is still known as the worst game ever made. Then you have companies like Kellogg's trying to make a game. Then you have like underwear brands trying to make a game. Like, hey, buy our
Fruit of
underwear.
the Loom, baby. Yep.
Buy Fruit of the Loom, and you get this Atari game, and it was just like jacked up. Like it was just so flooded, and that was the downfall of Atari. But what happened was Nintendo was like, we want to stay away from the word video game. Like video game was so saturated, like we want to sell this as a toy. So that's why the NES was called the Nintendo Entertainment System, and it was marketed as a toy.
We're learning, all of you, right now. You're learning something here. I didn't even know that's how that came about. Damn. You know what? You're right though. Video games, just like they are now, right? It comes full circle. They were so saturated everywhere you go. It was something to do with video games, even TV, right? Those old animated Mario and Zelda, the TV series. But I remember very vividly, and I don't know why, in my cereal box, I would get floppy disk games. And I remember the Independence Day game came in my cereal box one day, a floppy disk.
There was an Independence game.
And it was terrible. It was awful. But that spawned me to kind of really get into more PC, right? playing things like what was before
Doom,
Quake, you know, Doom for sure, Doom, but then
Wolfenstein 3D.
Wolfenstein
Oh,
3D, like yeah, it was crazy the weird ways that you find inspiration, and it was in my cereal box with a floppy disk,
Boy, that's like an episode into itself. Is the demo disc like
right?
the role of the demo disc and like the demo experience? It evolved into light apps. At one point, before the free to play model existed, we all downloaded like a half enabled sort of turd version of whatever game or app we wanted to play, and then you had to go and pay for the $4.99 to get it. Back in the day, you got discs, whether they were CD. I remember I saved up for like multiple weekends of yard work to buy an Electronic Gaming Monthly (EGM) because it came with the floppy Blackthorn, which is one of Blizzard's first games. This is Rock and Roll Racing era, and it was not a good game. It was not. There's a reason why no one's heard of this game. It was not Blizzard's crowning achievement. You're not going to find this in Heroes of the Storm. Speaking of dead IP, but yeah, and I remember actually loading that up, and it was totally worth it. It was totally worth it. And then I don't think they ever actually fully released the game. I don't know, maybe not. Maybe it died on the demo.
That might have been their split testing. That's how they did it back in the day, right? Here, just plaster this little demo disc out there, and if it gets good, then we'll actually make the rest of the game. It doesn't exist yet, but we'll make it if it goes good.
Like how pre-order sales work now.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember? I think this might be a good last topic before we head off. Is speaking of like sending stuff through the mail. So Nintendo had these championships, and they were Nintendo used to do championships in person at like E3, and they would do on the road championships, right? You would play a series of 3 games, and I even participated in one. I remember playing at a championship, and it was at a local military base, and you won a free T-shirt if you beat your group. And I won this orange lettered white T-shirt that said you won the championship. It was at a military base with all the other kids. So, but before that, Nintendo wanted to, make this global. And so they did their championships where they would send you an actual Nintendo game, but there was a Switch on it. And that Switch allowed you to save your scores and play the 3 games. The 3 games were, I believe, Super Mario Kart, Ken Griffey Jr. Baseball, and then Super Mario Bros. 3. And so you would turn on this Switch, you will play your trial run, whatever you want to call it, and then you will send it back. And then if you scored high enough, then you'll get sent out to the actual ceremony or actual.
Wow.
That was, to me, that was very innovative at the time.
It's like a blind leaderboard. Like
Wow.
that's pretty innovative, actually.
Yeah, and at the time too, I don't think there was a lot of hackers, that could hack the game, and
throw your Game Genie in there.
yeah, or did something like that. It was like you played points. So like the Super Mario Brothers, you would have to like play and collect, bust the bricks and collect the coins, and it was very timed. King Griffey Jr. You had to hit the home run derby. You had to hit many home runs within like 2 minutes, and then the very last one was the Super Mario Kart, where you had to complete the circuit in the fastest time. So they added like all 3 categories for all your points.
Nice. And did you
right.
get the jacket? Did they send you back any goodies?
I didn't do the at-home version. Like I said, I went to the one on a local military base where they had the truck that came out. I didn't score high enough to be in the top 3 because it was insanely competitive out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was cool.
Guys, when our podcast is like nationally, globally franchised, I should say, let's find one of those trucks, refurbish it, and we could just drive that around and film episodes. What do you think?
I'm
down.
down.
Bad idea. I like that.
I'm down. I actually saw a LinkedIn opportunity where it says you want a franchise. I think it was on Shark Tank too, where like how for birthday parties they send out these trucks for like clown events, whatever. But these are gaming where you send out the truck and it has like gaming consoles and kids play. And it was like a franchise opportunity. I was like, you know what? If I had the extra money around, I was like, sure, why not? I'll own one of them.
It's pretty cool shit, man. My neighbor, I crashed his little boy's birthday party because he had one of those trucks parked out front, and it's halfway in front of my driveway too, so I get dibs, right? So I go on there and I check it out, and it's got a full racing sim in there for like Forza.
Oh, nice.
It's got like 12
Whoa,
screens
whoa.
lined up along the side. The sides popped out with more screens, and
Yep.
people were jamming on like Smash Bros. And it's like, man, this is genius. This
It's
is
genius
brilliant.
and less overhead too. I mean, what are you paying for? Gas?
Yeah, maybe Wi-Fi or
Yeah.
Oil
whatever.
change?
If you, yeah, whatever. But oh, loved it. That is a good idea though. We would do a podcast, and then we'd just have to put up a bunch of I don't know, different game systems in there that we can mess around with while we're talking.
Deal.
Wedding events.
We can line the walls with all these terrible systems, like the worst hall of shame.
Jaguars right up front there.
Or we get Gen
have it-
Z or we get Gen A to play like the Neo Geos and be like, hey, this new system came out. What do you think about it?
Yeah,
And just trick them. And they're
Well,
like, this
Oh,
is
you know
terrible.
what?
have like the Lion King game or whatever, if you can beat this game, then we'll have a prize for you here at the end or whatever. Or the water temple from Zelda.
And they're gonna scream like, where's the
Drama.
save? Where's the save data? Like, why can't I save? Like, nope, that's not
Said,
how that's not
You
how you
tell me,
roll.
where can you save?
That's right.
Oh.
That's not how this works.
You know what we can do too? Let's find like the nation's best van mural artist and have them do an Altered Beast mural on the side of the truck.
Oh Lord.
And that way Justin can be super triggered every time it pulls up. He's like, shit.
John, in your next TikTok video or your next event, you gotta rock the Altered Beast t-shirt, man. I mean,
I'm gonna find one. I'll make one. I'm gonna make one.
Yeah, make one.
Don't threaten him with a good time.
I hope one doesn't show up at your house mysteriously, Justin. Oops.
He's gonna open up his mail, the package, and he's gonna have like PTSD, like the flashbacks and the
That's okay. I'll have the Atari ET shirt. You know what I mean? So
classic.
we're just for like a whole month. We'll just rock bad game. You know.
Man, one episode of that year, we should just call it the worst episode. We should call it the worst episode of the year, and it's just all about the worst.
Yeah.
We wear our Jaguar shirts. Keith said he'll get an Altered Beast tattoo.
I got some space. We'll squeeze one in there somewhere.
Right here.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great idea.
It's like Mike Tyson.
It's definitely a conversation starter. It's a party trick.
Oh yeah,
it might be a conversation ender.
Yeah, it might be a relationship ender for me.
I mean, like only the true OGs know about Ultra Beast. I mean, I think you'd be fine with like the younger crowds out there.
It's all right. We're inspiring a whole new generation of Google. They're going to be all over Google. It's going to be all over their with their recommended stuff. Right, their ads are going to be flooded with it now. Retro system.
Google HQ. They're like, why is anyone Googling Altered Beast? Why the spike in Game Gear interest? I think we're vastly overestimating our audience size, by the way, but that's okay. Sure.
Oh, hey, fine. You know what? People are going to look back at this episode. That's what matters. Okay.
The history. Well, boys, thanks for playing in the nostalgia pool with me and for talking about our favorites and least favorites. That was fun. That was a good time.
It was a good one. I hope.
Yeah, that was
a
good rundown. Memory lane.
Have fun over there. Get some snacks, and they serve alcohol there or what?
They sure do.
Oh, do they?
I mean, not here, but around.
Okay. Fair enough. And that was the one thing I didn't like about conventions is you're stuck with the Mountain Dew. I mean, I love Mountain Dew, but like we went to the
Christina Marie Drake is around here. She better not hear you talking bad about Mountain Dew. She could appear at any moment.
I love Mountain Dew. I'm drinking it now, so I wanted to have that experience as adult beverage, especially when we went to that Diablo section in BlizzCon, John, remember? And they were serving those drinks. And that was the very first question I asked was like, are these spiked? And they're like, no, unfortunately, because of the convention rules. But I would love, what's funny though? Tattoo conventions. I got my tattoo just at a tattoo convention, but they were serving alcohol at the tattoo convention. I was like, yeah.
Everybody else does it. I go to a few.
Good decision juice. Yes.
SHOT Show. SHOT Show is a big one in the firearms industry. You would think, but as soon as 5 o'clock hits in that convention center, every single booth whips out their bar top and starts giving away shots and beer in their special mugs or whatever. So
yeah, I guess because you can't allow kids.
Well, exactly right. There's a strict age demographic there, but hey, I will be the first to sign the petition that at the next GDC or E3, if they come back or whatever it is, 5 o'clock hits, 21 and under gets the boot, or they get the big X on the hand and they start whipping out the drinks. I'll be happy with that.
Yep. I think that's a good idea. Yeah, strongly in support of.
I'm down.
All right,
Awesome.
gentlemen, that was good.
All right, boys, here's to the next adventure.